Hello, I'm Susan King, and I'm the Dean here of the School of Journalism and Mass Communication with a special guest that we wanted to share with you. He's here to meet many of the classroom students, but we thought the entire school, the entire community should get to hear from you. Jim Roberts, class of 77, and always like to say this, so on the masthead of the New York Times, because that is not an easy place to get.
It's an honor.
But the correct title is Assistant Managing Editor for Digital Content of the New York Times. A whole business that didn't exist when you graduated from this school.
Indeed.
So
it's come a long way, and we as journalists have come a long way. I didn't quite know what I was going to be doing when I got out of college. I knew it was a profession that I wanted to participate in. What's been so gratifying to me is just to be able to sort of participate in all the change and the development that has gone on. I feel blessed to be working at the New York Times, but also to be working in the sphere of digital news and information. It makes me think in a different way. I feel a little younger than I might otherwise feel, but seriously, it's great to be able to participate in such an innovative part of the business.
what's exciting for, I think, this school to have you as a graduate, and for the students who get to meet you and hear from you, is that you're not only having the excitement of perhaps being part of this digital age, but you are defining it. You are a leader of the digital age. I mean, you really are helping to decide what this business will be in the future. So,
well, it's a burden that, well, it is a burden, but it is also an incredible challenge.
Yeah.
It's something that, I give a lot of thought to on a daily basis. I sometimes wake up thinking about, how should we take innovation, into the next era? What should we be thinking about that we're not thinking about now? It's great to have been there and to be able to help sort of foster a lot of the developments and a lot of innovation. But you're only as good as what you did yesterday. I was talking to one of the classes earlier, saying that even the smartest project that you can do today is going to be copied by somebody tomorrow. And you can't rest on your laurels. The change in, or the pace of change in technology is so brisk as well that you have a great opportunity there to always take advantage of it. But the pressure is there too, because what was new and cool again yesterday is not going to be new and cool tomorrow.
right, or selling. But let's talk about this election year, because this gives a chance, I think, to understand even how you're planning to cover a business that's also changed dramatically in the 4 years. Because 4 years ago it was big news that Obama was using social media, et cetera.
Right.
Everyone is. And there's some new players in the fields in 4 years in terms of journalism. So you think of this year of 2012, clearly there's big audiences, a national conversation is underway. How do you plan for the year?
Well, politics has always been a real driver for us on a couple of levels. Certainly the audience, our traffic levels have always been really, really high when you get in the middle of a political season. But it's also been a great opportunity for us. It pushes us to try new things. And it's been an opportunity for us to experiment, whether it's delivering data in real time of election results, doing video or multimedia projects that we might not otherwise do. It really pushes us as journalists to try new things. And I think we've been at our best in some ways at nytimes.com when we are doing politics and working on the elections. You talk about a burden. It is huge. The manpower demands that it places on our journalists, both people who are in the field, those who are in the newsroom. We plan accordingly, but it still is a significant amount of work. I think we started, I'm trying to remember when we actually started planning for 2012, probably a couple of weeks after the midterms, honestly. Planning political coverage for the New York Times is just about an ongoing thing. For all the planning, though, you can't really anticipate the twists and turns.
That's what makes it great.
It's what makes it great. This year has been I think particularly demanding in some ways, just because the sheer number of debates that have happened. I think we're up to 16 or 17 so far. That, again, is a great opportunity. Build your audience. People tend to really gravitate around certain events like that. But it takes a lot of work to do all that coverage.
Let's talk just a little bit about the debates, because
Sure.
what happened on television is they really drew big audiences. So then television networks and television cable stations said, we're going to sponsor them because they're bringing an audience into the station. How do you deal with that? Because now it's a television event. How do you engage your audience when they sort of watched it?
It really is it is a challenge. Social media, I think, is one way of doing it. We've noticed that there is a rather high degree of participation among the public in social media. People are on Twitter aggressively during debates. They're, shooting notes back and forth. Some of it seems to be a little bit of a competition about who can be the most creative or wry, or in some cases snarky about what one of the candidates has said. In some ways, I think we can be a companion to the viewing process. And we've built our site, we've built a portion of our website that tends to bring in a lot of that live material. We aggregate interesting tweets. We use little blog dispatches from our correspondents, both those who are actually covering the debates, others who are part of our political team. We do real-time fact-checking.
Wow.
And we encourage users, as they're watching a debate on Fox News, we have a portion of our site devoted to fact-checking. We allow people, to ask us a question that we will then put our researchers to work trying to answer. And we've been pretty successful, I think, at answering some of those in relatively close to being real time, so that before the debate is over, we will have answered a half dozen or more very specific fact-checking questions that our audience has asked.
So you're affecting the coverage as even the event is happening.
I think we have to recognize, yes,
Yeah.
we do have to recognize, yes, you're not going to pry people away from a television set during an event like this, but you can be an effective companion, and I think you can be useful to the discourse.
Yeah.
You can correct statements that are obviously wrong, or maybe even raise questions that suggest, should the audience help you answer it?
Crowdsourcing?
We've done a little crowdsourcing, yeah.
So in a way, when they talk about engaging an audience, and that's one of the different pieces for journalism, because it used to be one way and now it's two ways.
It's multi-ways.
Multi-ways.
Right.
But when you're sitting there planning coverage then, I'm all of a sudden seeing a way that I hadn't even thought about.
Right.
You are planning on having the audience, the television audience, sitting at home with their screen in their lap watching the New York Times at the same time, right?
We talk a little bit about the second screen experience, okay? We think about this in terms of political debates. We also think about this in terms of other sort of big events when you have a mass of people watching the same thing. I remember it was probably this time 2 years ago, watching the Super Bowl. I was watching in my I think I was probably in my basement, television in front of me. I think this was maybe right around the time of tablets, but I know I had at least one other screen in front of me. And it just struck me the way people were using digital media to have their own conversations around this event. Some of it was on Twitter, some of it was people interacting with blog posts, sending in comments and things like that. But it was really fascinating to have millions of people, everybody doing the same thing, and wanting to talk about that experience. So we are working to sort of be that second screen, and I know our competitors are doing similar things, so that for the Super Bowl, for the Oscars, the Final Four, or other sort of big events where a lot of people are gathered watching the same thing, we want to be their companion. We want to be able to provide information to them in real time while they're doing it, help give them more information, connect with them with social media, and just make the experience better.
It's pretty revolutionary for the New York Times, though, isn't it?
It might be. I'd like to think it's a little more evolutionary. The idea of trying to cover things in real time has been something that again, this is where elections really do catalyze innovation for us. In 2008, the idea of sort of live blogging, we live blogged primary nights, we live blogged debate nights. That really is now becoming part of our repertoire. Well, it was part of our repertoire 4 years ago, and now it has sort of evolved to the point where, yes, we're live blogging, we're live tweeting.
Live fact-checking.
We're live fact-checking. Yeah. We introduced this year a new app that's devoted to elections coverage. And we have a person who's working on that. And I don't know if live apping has become a term yet, but we're doing that too. Yeah. And I think you have to. Yeah. You really want to be relevant.
But how do you know if it works? How do you then decide, let's keep this up and let's shed that?
Totally good question. That's a totally good question. Because honestly, we may come to the point where we have to make that kind of decision because you cannot do everything. I think we're in the point right now where we're trying a lot of things. I'd like to think we will, maybe get past this election cycle and figure out, does this work better? Do we still need to do live blogging in the way we once did? That's as tough a question as I could imagine, and I don't know really what the answer is. I mean, metrics can help you. We know a lot about what our audience is doing. That's one guide, but that may not be the only guide.
Who do you think of as your competitor now? Is it the other newspapers? Is it your own newspaper?
Oh, I'd like to think that we're not competing against ourselves, although you could certainly push that question pretty hard. And I think that we need our newspaper, our traditional newspaper to be healthy and to be a reliable source for people. But I don't think we're supplanting it. Yeah. I think the printed paper that people get every morning is really an incredible compilation of news, analysis, really helps you understand everything that's happened the day before. Hopefully it'll help you prepare for what's about to happen in the current day. While much of that material is definitely available on the website, covering news in real time and doing it aggressively in two-way, multi-way fashion, I don't think supplants the pleasure and the information that people are able to get in a printed newspaper. But our competitors, when I think about our competitors, wow, everybody. I mean, everything from our traditional news media competitors, from the Wall Street Journal to the Washington Post to USA Today and LA Times, you name it, any major metropolitan daily in the United States is considered a competitor. We have online competitors, yeah. The Huffington Post, we compete against the BBC, we compete against the Guardian. I could probably reel off 100 blogs that we have to in one fashion or another pay attention to. Yeah. Twitter, Facebook, their competitors.
So a lifestyle question when this goes on. Yeah. I mean, this is, it's never been a business for the faint-hearted because, deadlines were always there, but the deadlines were different maybe once a day. And right. Now they are 24/7, and you're engaging all the time. So you need to know what happened before and what's happening during on multiple screens as we're talking. So what's it like in this world? So many students here are deciding, do I want to do this?
Well, I'm going to tell them it's great, but you don't get as much sleep as you used to, or I certainly don't. You're right, it's not for the faint-hearted. It does require a lot of work. It requires a lot of attention. It requires a lot of imagination, and but it's incredibly rewarding. In one of the classes that I was speaking to earlier today, I said, as I often do whenever I am speaking to other journalists, young or more experienced ones, I do believe, I really mean this from the bottom of my heart, we are in a golden age of storytelling. I truly believe it. I know that, the economics of the news business can be really tough, but the tools that journalists have at their disposal these days, they're unimaginable. Whether it's something as vivid as video, or as intricate as multimedia, or as pervasive as social media, if you have the desire to tell stories, if you feel that you can be a good purveyor of information from here to here, I can't think of a better time to be a journalist. And so, yes, it's harder. It does require much more of your time and concentration, but if you're creative and have a lot of energy, it's worth it.
A question based from one of our great researchers here, Don Shaw, who did a lot of the work that showed agenda setting by the news organizations in America. And it comes from this standpoint. I am reading one of our graduates' work, one of the New York Times best, Tom Wicker, who died this year.
Right.
And he wrote a novel which I had on my bookshelf called Facing the Lions. And it was sort of telling the story about a guy who ran for politics that he had befriended. And, he could make or break that guy's campaign,
right.
part of it through. And you could definitely do it in those days. With all these different screens, with all these different organizations, with this information stream that comes in different ways, do you still feel like you are the agenda setter? The New York Times always was that. How do you think of yourself?
Well, I certainly don't feel that we are an agenda setter in the in sort of an aggressive, pointed way, in the sense that I don't think we certainly don't attempt to dictate what people think about. We really do go out of our way, even though there are plenty of people who, feel that we are aligned, with one point on the political spectrum. We go out of our way to really play a very straight approach to reporting news and information. I mean, it's not hard to figure out who doesn't play it that way. I think that, if we are agenda setters, it's in the sense that we focus on issues that we consider to be sort of important to the public discourse. And we focus on issues that we feel we can help people understand better, or feel like maybe some aggressive, for lack of a better word, exposing needs to be done. I mean, you may detect a certain degree of discomfort on my part simply with the question. I don't like to think of myself as an agenda setter. I don't think our journalists do either. I think that those words imply a little bit more of a partisan attitude. I know that's not precisely how you were framing it, or at least I don't think you were.
Right.
But those words do feel a little bit, a little more aggressive than I feel in terms of how we decide where coverage should be. Possibly one of the reasons I recoil a little bit is that is the big accusation against the New York Times, is that it has an agenda, right?
Yeah.
Or that we're part of the liberal media cabal. And so I pull back a little bit, but a little bit from that. But I do understand that we have a role in it, in that when we do focus our attention on a specific issue, like it or not, we've made that an issue that other people need to pay attention to, or will be paying attention to. So that you talk about, that is a burden that I think we have to bear with great consideration.
We'll let Don Shaw listen to those remarks and share them and analyze them a little bit, because I think that I didn't mean it from a political standpoint. But
Right.
There's no doubt about
Right.
it, the influence the New York Times, but also major newspapers in their communities, that they become agenda setters in what those communities
I
talk
recognize
about.
that, yeah.
And the role of democracy. But
The
sometimes
obligation, though, that does place on
Yeah.
us is enormous.
enormous.
Right.
I get that. This is the last question. I like to think of this school, I'm new here, but my sense of what makes the School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Chapel Hill different than many others is it really has produced leaders of the news business on many scales. Many schools produce kids who come out and get that first job, but they produce people who have gotten that top jobs and been nationally and locally really prominent. And talk a little bit about what it means to be a leader, because you are one of those. What does it take in today's news world to be a leader? What you have to be flexible. I know that.
Patient. You have to have a lot of energy. There's no question. I think one reason that I am where I am and that I've achieved what I've achieved is I'm willing to work. I'm willing to work hard. I really do throw myself into my work. I'm certainly not. My generation is not the digital generation. That's for certain. Yet I've been working on the digital side of the New York Times news organization for close to 6 years now. And the reason I've been able to do that, I think, is by throwing myself into it, really trying to learn it by listening to really smart people. I have many colleagues who have been great advisors to me. One of the classes gave me an opportunity to tell students the one regret that I have, having gone to the digital side, is I never took the time to learn truly the technical aspects of the digital tools as well as I should have. I should have spent some more time learning how somebody develops some code. It's not something I needed to know for my job, but I really wish I had gotten a little bit more of that practical knowledge and experience. But again, to go back to your question of what it takes, I think energy is so critical, patience, and I really feel like I've tried to bring not just my own physical energy, but dare I say, a certain degree of inspirational energy. I really try, the people that I have led who've worked for me as journalists, particularly on those recently on the digital side, I've tried to be a strong leader for them and to really inspire them to do good work. One of the great joys that I've had in the past 5 or 6 years is working with some incredibly talented multimedia journalists who came out of this program. It's always fun to come down and talk about people who are now my colleagues, but who are fairly recent graduates of UNC, who really have gone on to do incredibly good, imaginative, creative work. And the most joyous moments that I've had in the past few years have been working with them, learning from them, and really having the ability to be their leader. I couldn't ask for a better opportunity.
And thanks for the plug.
I had to.
We can use it.
No, seriously, I can't say enough about that. That some of the recent graduates that I worked with from Carolina have they've really blown me away with their technical skills, but also their imagination. And when I look back to some of the really big achievements that we made 4 years ago, in terms of sort of thinking about the election in multimedia terms, I look to the achievements that some of those Carolina graduates contributed to.
Jim Roberts, thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.